Hello, friends. The presented map was prepared by Western representatives. She describes the situation in Ukraine at the moment, March 21. It should be noted that the map does not quite reflect reality, it is not objective enough. At the same time, the presented scenario should, it would seem, cheer up the Kyiv regime, but in fact it cannot report anything joyful because all the marks made on the map are the advance of Russian troops. These are strikes that are inflicted on the military-industrial infrastructure of the Kiev regime. The red arrows are the advances of the Russian troops. At the same time, there are no blue arrows symbolizing the counter-offensive of the armed forces of Ukraine, just as there are no marks about the strikes of Ukrainian troops on some infrastructure facilities, either by advancing units or on the territory, in fact, of the aggressor country. Next news. Deputy Prime Minister Vereshchuk refused Russia's offer to surrender their weapons and withdraw from the group encircled in the city of Mariupol. I quote, "There can be no talk of any surrender and laying down of weapons, we have already informed the Russian side about this." Quite a humane statement. Odessa residents from the windows of houses shoot explosions near the coast of Odessa. The head of the operations headquarters of the Odessa military administration said that they shot down a Russian warship, already 4, although the proximity of the explosions indicates that this shelling is carried out by the Ukrainian side in the immediate vicinity of the coast, not to mention that the mines that are again located by the Ukrainian military directly near the coastline can also explode there. The State Emergency Service of the Sumy region reports that an ammonia leak in the city of Sumy occurred as a result of the shelling of the Sumy Kimprom plant. The most interesting thing here is that when this happened, the governor directly stated that there was an accident and an ammonia leak, and no one noticed the shelling at that time. The message about him appeared later. At the same time, the residents of the city of Sumy themselves have been asking me for 2 or 3 days in conversations whether a gas mask saves from ammonia leakage and how to defend themselves because there was an accident at Sumy Kimprom. Message from the governor of the Rivne region, Russia launched 2 missile strikes on the region, where exactly was not reported. On the other hand, the Ministry of Defense of Russia reports that a blow was struck at a training center for mercenaries and Ukrainian nationalists at a combined arms training ground in the village of Novaya Lyubomirka. The large landing ship Orsk arrived in the port of the city of Berdyansk, where it delivered new armored vehicles for the Russian army. And with this, a very timely message was made by the Chinese Global Times. Quote, "Russia's military operation in Ukraine is not a war that Russia cannot fight alone. Judging by what we are seeing, the Russian military-industrial complex can provide what the Russian troops need. Russia sends weapons for export to its partners, why does it need military supplies from others? Here I note that the Kyiv regime is fighting on the old Soviet equipment, which they got it after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and new revenues are not expected, so the situation will only worsen every day. As for what is happening in Ukraine, the Chinese see it and paint it like this." Next photo. Georgia supplies such drones to the Kiev regime. At the same time, 64% of the polled residents of Georgia support the fact that the Georgian government did not support sanctions against Russia. Yesterday, the Kyiv regime reported that the armed forces of Ukraine recaptured settlements called Cherkasy and Russian Tishki in the Kharkov region. Sergei Moiseev visited these settlements today. He is a Kharkov resident, Orthodox, a person who takes the problems of Ukraine to heart. 2 decades ago, he created the social movement Triune Russia with a telling name, and now he is forced to walk in a helmet and bulletproof vest in those places that are dear and close to him. And once again about the shelling of a shopping center in the settlement of Myrny Podol. The photo was taken by the National Police of Ukraine. The sleeve shown in the photo from the peony, this is not a shell, I emphasize, but a sleeve from a 203mm howitzer. At the same time, geolocation shelling of the Grad system, which according to available data, was carried out from this area, indicates that the Grad systems worked from this particular area of the city, near the shopping center. Apparently, they hid just in the destroyed warehouses. It is possible that other ammunition was stored there. And in this photo you see a fortification near one of the schools in the city of Odessa. This is a photo from a video which was made by a local resident who told that now schools are being strengthened in this way. There will apparently be something serious here, but then they will tell that hundreds of children died here. At the moment, the troops of the Lugansk Republic are evacuating civilians from the city of Rubin. The city is completely under the control of the People's Militia, but the armed forces of Ukraine continue shelling, and therefore people are being evacuated. Fighting is now going on between the settlements of Rubezhnoye and Lysychansk. And in this photo you see the passage of the former border between Ukraine and Russia, the customs permits. This is being carried humanitarian aid to the settlement of Balaklia, Kharkov region, which has also been occupied by Russian troops for a long time, but is also under shelling. The humanitarian convoys, which are now forced to accompany the Russian military, are also being shelled in the same way. Moreover, in the early days, Ukrainian troops fired on humanitarian aid vehicles even more fiercely than military vehicles, which could shoot back, unlike humanitarian aid vehicles. Meanwhile, a group of night hunters on K-52 and Mi-28N helicopters destroyed 8 tanks, 4 infantry fighting vehicles and 3 armored personnel carriers during the night. This is reported by the Russian Ministry of Defense. And in Russia itself, at this time, they are being delivered to shopping centers and building sugar barricades there. I remember that this happened 2 years ago in the city of Sevastopol, when in the midst of pandemic in Europe, sugar, buckwheat, ordinary water, toilet paper were disappearing. These mountains and mountains were specially imported from us in order to bring down the hype that never came. Some more news. The demand for an anti-nuclear shelter in France has skyrocketed since the start of Russia's special operation on February 24. People pay from €70,000 or more for an underground shelter ranging from 7 to 15 square meters. And someone makes good money on hysteria. Quote, seeing this symbol, the letter Z is meant, as it is used and associated with by what the aggressor state is doing now, it is clear that some kind of sanctions must be applied, Latvian Defense Minister Pabrik said. No comment. And here is what he said after Zelensky's speech before the Knesset of the Israeli parliament member of the Knesset. Quote, I don't understand Ukrainian, but if the translation is correct, Zelensky asked us to treat Ukrainians the same way they treated us 80 years ago. I'm sorry, but I think we'll have to decline this request. We are after all, a moral nation. This incident once again proves some to say the mental limitations of Zelensky and the company, which, in fact, insulted the Israelis and members of the Knesset, among other things, because you can treat Ukrainians differently, you can treat Ukrainians very well, but the Kiev regime, which relies on Ukrainian nationalism, they cannot treat well in Israel because Bandera, Shukovich, Yupa are punisher and murderers for them. They remember very well who organized the Babi Yar, including with the Germans. If someone has forgotten, I will recall the words of one deputy, said back in the days of Yushchenko's rule in Ukraine on this occasion. Quote, I am proud that of the several hundred executioners at Babi Yar, the majority were Ukrainians. I recall the words spoken by Tyagnabok in 2004, literally it sounded like this. We must follow the example of our grandfathers, who picked up a machine gun and went to destroy Muscovites, Jews and other evil spirits. This is the reason for what is happening now in the territory of the once former Ukraine. That's all the best to you, and see you soon.